Alright, welcome everybody for a Banter Blitz session. Today I will be able to see the board, so maybe I won't be quite as stupid, but still darn close. So let's get started. I can see Kyle Broflovsky in my challenges, so I'm always impartial to that. At some point, a long time ago, back when I was playing on ICC, like, this must have been over 10 years ago, my account was Leopold Stotch, which is, of course, Butters' real name. But, alright, let's see. Old Leopold against Kyle. Alright, Kyle. 5, 4, 3, 2. Don't make me do this. 1. Boo. Alright, fine. Okay, who else wants to play? Let's go with, Oh, Alexandra is here. Let's play with her. Let's see if she will cause me some trouble. Alright. So yeah, and as always, guys, I have the chat for Chess24 open, but not on YouTube and Twitch. So I'm sorry if I'm only reading that one. All right, so let's see if Alexandra can cause any damage to this system I gave for the King's Indian and Chessable. I gave the Bishop E3 system, which objectively I think it probably is good for a slight edge. You certainly can be more ambitious against the King's Indian than this, but I like for its practical value that it's very hard for black to generate attacking chances. So let's see if Alexandra knows what she's doing. The answer is to some degree no, because if white is able to play d5 and knight d2 in the King's Indian, he gets with the bishop on e3. It's the this is a coordination that normally white's not allowed to get. And furthermore, here I'm just going to start going b4, c5, and my king is probably going to end up actually castling long in most cases. But yeah, this coordination where I get the bishop to e3 and the knight to d2, black should not be allowing this. So I'm going to just start busting the queen side. Normally I've seen knight d7 there, but knight e8 is natural enough. And here the point is, because I haven't castled short, I mean, if black plays f4, bishop f2, g5, I believe I should be faster on the queen side if I castle, but I'm not going to castle into it. I'll just, like, be able to, yeah, so here I'm just going to go knight c4 and leave my king in the center, and might even castle long in some cases. So, and it's hard for black to get the kind of King's Indian counterplay you really need to justify playing this way. Yeah, so now g5 will come, sure, but, like, let's say I'm probably just going to leave my king in the center, feels the easiest. So I'm going to start with h3, so if black wants to play h5, then hg4 will be very good, opening some lines. So here, let's go with rook c1, and I'm going to look for some kind of knight b5. My king is just so much happier on e1 than he would be if I had castled. So here, yeah, so the mechanic is making fun of me, saying that oftentimes in the King's Indian, you think you're good to go on the queen's side, but then somehow something goes wrong. But I don't think this will be one of those cases, mainly because my king is just so much safer on e1 than it would be on g1. And I hear my rice is done in the background, but that's okay. Yeah, so here, like, if I had been castled, my king would be in some danger. I mean, I still think I'd be in good shape, but having not castled, I think black's completely done for. In fact, her queen is already in danger of getting trapped. So there, sure, I guess. Let's start with a4 to get a square for my knight to escape to, and prevent black from playing b5. Seems sensible enough. Whoa, rook a7, that's aggressive. I'm not sure I understand it. b5, okay, so I guess I have to take it. And then I'll tuck my bishop back, and yeah, I should be good to go here. so bishop f8, I guess that wants rook g7. I think knight e5 works. No, it doesn't. There will be queen a5 check. So let's go b4 and stop queen a5. And maybe I'll go knight a5 or even knight e5 next move. And as long as, I mean, again here, if I castle, it still is probably okay, but it just seems like it's begging for g4 at some point. But if I don't castle, there's no way I'm gonna have any real problem. All right, so here knight takes e5, bishop e2, knight f7. The tactics seem to work in white's favor, so I'm not gonna overthink it. Let's go knight e5. Yeah, and bishop b5. And I'm going to go like d6 and bishop c4 next. I guess black should play knight c8. That one, sure, but bishop c4, and if queen b4, I have queen d2, and then it's bad news for black. If queen d6, I might even have bishop c5. I mean, why not? Right, queen a4, but now d6 comes. Alright, so I'm finally gonna castle into it. I just didn't want to run into d7, bishop b4. But now d7 is coming. Yeah, so she goes g4, which is very understandable, but d7, and I think I'm very much getting there first in this case. So good game, Alexandra. Managed to play a pretty decent King's Indian. Monkey King says he's ready to play, and he has the Kyle picture. If we ever get Kyle or Borat or Cartman or Peter Griffin or someone in the picture, I'm always impartial, but I don't see his challenge. So let's play with Sidhu. All right, so good luck, Sidhu. I'm also going to put my course links in the chat. You can buy my repertoire there. I've given a full repertoire for black and white based on, for black, semi-Slavic, classical Sicilian, and for white based on d4. But yeah, okay. So who's Kyle? He's the kid from South Park who, well, I like all the kids from South Park, but he's the one, well, he and Butters are the one I identify most with. All right, Sidhu, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, board. So who else we got? Let's go with Torque Madita. I don't think I've played with this person before. From Spain. Oh, lots of Spaniards like to play with me. Good stuff. All right, good luck, Torque Madita. Please show up. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Why does nobody want to play with me? Let's play with, okay, Dr. Evil, fine, I will accept that. All right, Dr. Evil, let's play. I'm more of a Gordo Cabron guy myself, but I will accept Dr. Evil. All right. Now we got a game going. Yeah, so in the course I recommended knight f3 and then knight c3. And so yeah, I gave this main line. So in the Rogozin, the old main line that like used to be really popular back in like the 90s and 2000s was the CD bishop g5. It's since largely fallen out of favor, but I never really understood why, and I gave it in the chessable course, and I've been very satisfied with it. I think this move knight c6 is very wrong for black. Oftentimes white plays queen a4 check just to provoke that knight to c6, and here black went there voluntarily, so I think that knight is misplaced. It blocks the c pawn, it makes it hard to defend the d pawn. So I'm just going to keep on with normal development. Probably will reroute knight e2 to f4 pretty soon. But yeah, I think this knight on c6, like one bad piece makes a bad position. I think apart from this knight on c6, black's position is like totally fine. But with it, it gets pretty unpleasant. All right, so black is just begging me to ruin the structure, and I think I'm going to oblige. And now I don't want to give him the bishop pair, so I'm going to go chase the dark square bishop. And here, I don't think black's like totally checkmated here, but it looks very dangerous. So I'm gonna start with b4. And then I want knight a4 first. Yeah, let's go knight a4. I'm not sure I want to take it. I might just go knight c5, but some kind of knight a4, knight h4. And he's going to end up with... Yeah, so here, if he plays bishop c7, he saves the bishop, but knight c5 will come, and maybe with queen h5 first, and it looks pretty bad for black here. Knight g6, I don't get. It looks like it drops a pawn, so I'm going to let this guy educate me. All right, Dr. Evil. You're going down. F7, sure, but this is not going to fly. Let's start with queen h5. And potentially take on h6 next, and I'm taking all the pawns and his king is getting torn apart. Yeah, so now queen h6 forces him to take the bishop. And then I just have to lift a rook, which unfortunately I can't do right away, but I can go f4, and then I'll be able to play rook f3, and that should be good enough. So, yeah, here. Oh, but queen h7, he survives, because he would have had rook g8. Oh well. Queen h7, he could have maybe... I mean, he certainly dead lost, but he could have fought a little bit, because if I had gone... Yeah, okay. So good game through the Wyatt. Dr. Evil down. That's one villain we've taken care of. Alright, Monkey King, you say you're ready? Let's play with Kyle. Alright, Kyle. You signed an agreement, Kyle. I'm not a very good Cartman. But yeah, so here I'm sticking with my repertoire. That's basically all I do in these banter blitzes. It's, I guess, shameless advertising, but I really am very happy with the repertoire I've done for Chessable, and I just sort of like to show it off here, I guess you could say. But I really like, one thing I like about the knight f3 move order is that it avoids this whole Dubov idea in the Tarrasch, which I found a little bit annoying. So here DC, and I gave a3 after bishop c5. I like playing a3 before knight c3, because if you go bishop c5, knight c3, castle, and then a3 with the not so subtle intention of playing b4 next. Wow, so he just lets me defend that pawn. I guess I can try bishop e3, I don't see why not. But if he plays bishop c5, I like playing a3 instead. And thank you guys, I appreciate you saying the classical Sicilian course is good. For whatever reason, it got really bad reviews. I have no idea why. I thought it was a very good course, and it's the one that I've actually been using the most in my own play. Like, I would play the Semislav stuff for black sometimes, but not all the time. And I did it with some success, but it was just one weapon in my arsenal among many. But I've just been playing the classical Sicilian like game after game after game. It's the one that I've certainly got the most use out of, but it's gotten the most critical reviews, so I don't know. I guess people have different priorities or opinions, but yeah. So here I think I'm pretty confident I can hang on to this extra pawn. So like if I now take on c6 and go b4, that really feels like just a clean pawn up. There's other options, but that just seems so natural that I don't. Come on, there's no reason not to. Just take in b4. If rook c6, b4. If bc, I don't even need b4. Yeah, so bc now, let's just go knight c3. And here I've managed to consolidate with a very healthy extra pawn. I guess he can try knight d7, but it shouldn't work. I'll go b4. And so rook b8, I suppose that makes sense. So let's go rook b1. No, rook b1, there's bishop f5. Rook b8's a clever move, actually. So I guess the point is that he wants to play knight d7 next without walking into b4. Let's just start by h3. I think that can't be wrong. Probably should have played this earlier. So bishop h5, and now I'm gonna go queen d2, defend that pawn. If knight d7, I have knight a4, and I think I'm pretty healthy pawn up. Maybe it's not that easy though. Knight d7, knight a4, bishop f6, and he's not threatening anything, but it's just a little bit awkward for me to coordinate my pieces. I mean, I do think I should be basically winning here, but okay, queen d7 is not going to do him any favors. That's the square he needed for his knight. So now I'm going to go bishop d4, and yeah. Kyle, I think I've caused you some trouble here. Alright, so queen b7. Do I believe he's actually threatening to take on b2? Not particularly. I could just go a3 and say, hey, I'm playing b4 next and I dare you to take on b2. But a3, queen b3 might be a bit annoying. Let's just be simple. I mean, I don't think he was threatening to take this pawn, but it's just better to not leave it hanging. I mean, at some point, you can imagine a tactical sequence where it happens. Yeah, so queen b4, let's make sure everything is nice. Oh, did I just hang the c5 pawn? Oh boy, guys, it's gonna be one of those days. I slept really badly last night, so I have an excuse, but that's really bad. After bishop c5, he's still worse, but it's not nearly as bad as it could have been. So yeah, this was just extremely stupid. But luckily for me, white is still better. Like, I think actually much better, thanks to the pawn structure. So I go e3, and then I have very good play against these hanging pawns, and I don't really think he has much counterplay. So rook c8, sure. Let's start with queen d4, seems like a natural move. If c5, I'm going to have knight d5. Alright, so there, but my thought was now I can go knight a4 without running into c5. And he's got so many weak squares. Alright, so let's go knight c5. I guess he can try knight g5 and hope for the best, but even then I'm even considering just going g4, f4 and taking his bishop. So, yeah, strategically speaking, this game is over. The only question is if I can avoid blundering something, and I've already just dropped a pawn for dead nothing this game, so, you know, you can't, that's never something we can totally rule out. Alright, so bishop g6 makes sense. Let's just bolster this knight with b4 a bit, and then once I have really conquered the c5 score, maybe I will reroute like knight b3 to a5. Okay, so he takes this way, but now the pawns will just fall. The rook, my other rook comes to c1, and this game is over. There's no way he's going to hold these pawns together. I guess he can try queen d7 here. Might not be stupid. Queen e6 instead. Let's just be very patient and start with a3 and make sure absolutely everything is defended. And I'm thinking of, let's see, so there's a few ways I can play this, but I'm going to go rook a5 and go after the a7 pawn. I think that's a good place to start. Alright, so he plays rook e7. I could just take this pawn. I don't really believe in queen e4. Yeah, I'm just going to take it. I don't believe queen e4 is going to hurt me. And if c5, I have rook e7. So, okay, so finally positional domination has led to one pawn up, which is a good start. And then next up, I bring the queen back to c5 and then throw b5. So how do we want to do this? If he does that, I can go queen d7 though. So now this is even more forceful. I thought he had to like bring queen e6 back, but all right. So let's go rook c6 seems fine. If f4, just queen e6 is good enough. Seems easy enough. There's a 0% chance black will save this position. So take. He can play rook a8 if he wants, but let's go rook e5, and then take this one, and then take this one, and king f2, and finally it will end up with 2 extra pawns for white, which is obviously winning. So Good game, Monkey King. I think it took me a little longer to finish off than I would have liked, but that's okay. Let's play with Pit 8911. So good game, Pit 8911. I'm just gonna keep on playing the repertoire. And so, Jup, you were saying, should you switch from e4 to d4? I don't like the word switch. I think that you should add it. I think people who only play e4 or who only play d4 can get way too used to their kinds of positions. If you only play e4, you can... I mean, if you're playing e4 right, like you're playing, you know, the Yugoslav against the Dragon and like Bishop g5 against the classical Sicilian, and you're constantly getting very sharp and very forcing positions in most of these lines. I think that this is the best way to play e4, and it just sort of deprives you of the ability to play like strategic chess that often. I mean, you'll still face the Berlin and stuff. It's not like you'll never play strategic chess, but it strikes me that you are sort of missing out to some degree. While if you only play d4, you're going to miss out on the tactical positions, and I think you need to be a complete player to be good at chess. All right, so why am I too dumb to remember what I recommended here? I think it's queen d3. And now if c5, I'm ready with d5. So one big appeal of the Russian system against the Grunfeld is that it's by far the most strategically ambitious line that that white can choose, because usually white either just lets the c4 d5 tension stay put, or if he plays c takes d5, then normally some kind of exchanges are going to happen. After knight takes d5, knight takes c3 comes, and that will exchange off a pair of minor pieces, which is something black is very happy about. Plus, it can somewhat weaken your structure with b takes c3. And the Russian system is the only line where we exchange off on d5, but we also we exchange the c and d pawns, but we also don't let black exchange the knight on c3. So here, he doesn't get to solve problems connected with lack of space by trading pieces, and he has to be very direct. So basically here, I think this guy now has a really wretched position without really having done anything that dumb. He just made a couple normal looking moves, and the next thing you know is he's in horrible shape. Black has to be very, very direct in the Russian system to try to reach anything sort of tenable. And here I think he's going to suffocate under the center, and already d5 is probably a pretty big threat. Okay, so this really feels like he's begging for d5 in some capacity, but let's see. So d5, if I go thinking like d5, cd5, bishop f6. Yeah, let's just do it. It looks like fun. I don't know. I'd probably be a bit more patient, or I might be, but this last game I was patient enough. And here my point is, I actually realized he could have played knight f4 there, but now this is very bad news for black. My knight coming to d5 is not something he's going to enjoy. He had knight f4 there, and I thought I had queen e3, but then I didn't realize he had queen f6, which would have given him maybe an okay position. All right, so queen b7, fine. Probably misplayed this egregiously, but that's okay. Let's just go rook ac1 and continue developing my pieces. All right, so bishop g7, let's dominate the knight. I think I've played this game egregiously badly, and black is basically fine now, when he was in massive trouble before, and I was just impatient with d5. But even here, I think objectively black has to be fine, but somehow it feels easier to play with white thanks to this knight on d5. All right, I'm sick of this bishop lasering down on my b2 pawn, so let's fix it. And his knight on e6 also is a very bad piece, which does speak in my favor. I may actually still be better here. Yeah, so that's a mistake. I get rook c7 and now it's gone. But it was hard. I mean, black just had a difficult position. His pieces were awkward. Yeah, so how are we going to do this? Let's just take with the rook on e7. Seems easy enough. Queen f3 incoming. And this knight on d5 is the boss of the board. so let's go queen f3. I guess rook f8 is forced, and now let's just start opening the king side a bit, h4. I don't think he's threatening anything, so I'm going to play h5. Yeah, so good game, Pitbull. I think that you have to be a bit more direct against the Russian system to get an acceptable position. Alright, let's go play with Vito and Ager. I don't know what that's, but he has the good, the bad, and the ugly, it looks like, so people are now my references. Alright, Vito and Ager, good luck. So continuing along, playing the repertoire, d6. Don't even remember what I gave here. I think it's knight f3. Alright, so we're quickly going to get back to King's Indian, which is fine. And again, I gave the line with bishop e3. So this guy plays bishop e2, bishop g4, and here bishop g4 and knight bd7 doesn't really seem like a brilliant combination for black. I don't know what the big idea is, but I guess we'll find out. Yeah, so bishop g4 and then voluntarily taking on f3 just feels very cooperative. Alright, so here we go d5, and I don't believe in these locked pawn structures where black goes d6 and e5, and he has this horrible bishop on g7. There's only two ways black can get an acceptable position. One is to trade off dark squared bishops, which I don't believe he's going to be able to do, and the other is to play f4, f5, f4, and try to launch a kingside attack, but I also don't think that's going to work here because at some point you'll need to be able to sacrifice on h3 and you don't have a bishop to do it with anymore. So let's go b4 and start gaining queenside space. I think once I could open the queenside, black's bishop on g7 will be completely unable to participate or do anything fun, and if a5 I have a3 and I don't mind the exchanges on the a file. So b6, sure. And it's going to be a little bit annoying to, so I'm going to start with bishop e2. I didn't want to do this last move because knight c5 would have been annoying, but here the bishop is rerouting somewhere a little more intelligent where it's not going to be in the way of white's pieces and can help pressure for c4. So rook b8, I don't understand. I'm not going to try to, so let's go queen d2. Bring the other rook to c1 soon. Alright, a5 I think is a mistake. That only weakens squares for him, and it's not like this tension helps. Now I can even swing my bishop to a4 and c6. But yeah, I just don't believe in black's counterplay without a white squared bishop here. Alright, so I think that's sort of begging for me to bring my bishop to a4, so let's prepare to set that plan in motion. I guess you can play rook a8 here, and I don't want to play bishop a4 yet because of knight g4. But now he's opened the a file voluntarily, so he's sort of done my dirty work for me. I'm happy to see that the queenside is getting opened up. And this should be basically lost for black. Alright, so let's start with f3 because I don't want to run into bishop a4, knight g4. So he goes knight g8, and I guess this makes sense because he wants to play bishop h6, but I don't think he's going to pull it off, so I'm going to proceed along with my normal plan, and the queen on d2 stops bishop h6. Alright, so he wants f5, f4, and to mate me, which makes perfect sense for this structure. I just don't think it's going to work without a white squared bishop, and in the meantime I have rook a7 coming. Maybe this bringing the bishop to c6 was dumb, but that's okay. I don't even know. Is there increment this game, or is he just dead lost on time? Alright, so he plays knight f6, but now I'm ready with rook a7 and it's knight b5, another rook to a1, and I'm crashing the queenside. Alright, so knight b5 seems like a good place to start. If rook c8, I think I can play rook c7 and bishop b6. Here I can definitely take on c7, and he just never got any kingside counterplay and is getting mauled on the queenside, so that's good news for me. Rook d7 and c7 is coming. Alright, so rook d7, and knight d6, or knight c7 doesn't quite trap the queen, but it's close enough. Alright, so queen d6, and now he's the one who's going to get mated. Rook g8, sure, let's go knight d5. Take. Yeah, okay. So good game, Vito and Ager. I don't think you managed to get the kind of counterplay you need in these kinds of King's Indian structures. Do I want to play on Gibraltar again? I'd love to, but it just depends if it's going to happen and when. I was going to play in 2019, but I got invited to Chorus A, which I couldn't turn down, and I was very happy to have played that. And then 2020 was the last edition I, in theory, could have played, I guess, but I just had such a horrible year in 2019 for so many reasons. I just didn't even want to play chess for like a few months. But yeah, I would love to come back to Gibraltar someday. It's a nice place. It's a nice tournament. All right, so here we're up with Bicariosno, which is probably some language I don't speak because it does look like what normally would be words. But yeah, so I'm just going to keep on playing the chessable repertoire. It hasn't failed me yet, and I don't know why I'm getting white so many games today. Have I even played black at all yet? It's sort of weird, but I will continue along with the chessable repertoire until somebody convinces me otherwise, because it seems to be working. So yeah, again, this guy as well plays the same way as Alexandra. Has white to coordinate with bishop e3, knight d2, which is a coordination you really do not want to let white reach in the King's Indian. And the only way that can happen is if I play bishop e3 and then d5 comes with tempo, because if I were to play d5 without coming with tempo and black had played without knight c6, then black would be in time to play knight g4, kicking my bishop, getting ready for f5, but here there's nothing of the sort. And again, I'm going to just leave my king in the center, just like I did with Alexandra, and as a result, I think that black has absolutely no chance to checkmate me. Well, if I were to ever castle in this position, all bets would be off, and black would have a lot of counterplay. Here, I just think leaving the king in the center, or even castling queenside, just almost is, like, untenable for black. So let's go knight c4. And, I guess if I take this and go knight b5, black will have to play knight e8, and then I can take on a7 again. I don't see why not, so let's do it. And yeah, I just don't believe black gets nearly the kind of counterplay you need. Like, imagine I had castled instead of knight b5, and black could go knight g6 and then meet knight b5 with bishop f8, and then get rook g7. This would be a much better defensive setup for black on d6. The rook would be behind the g-pawn, and there would be like very real counterplay, and my king would come under pressure. Now, it's still possible white's in good shape there. I mean, it's not like I'm dead and I'm taking the queen side, but there would be a ton of counterplay. But by leaving the king in the center, not only have I managed to force black's avoid the g4 stuff, but I've also forced black to like play knight e8 instead of bishop f8. All right, so b5 I don't understand. If I take with the pawn, doesn't that mean my knight gets to c6? Or I can play like b6, b7. Let's start with b6. Seems easy enough. And then b5 and knight c6, and yeah, black got basically no counterplay this game again. I think I'm doing a pretty good job of showing how to play against King's Indian here. As long as you leave the king in the center against this knight c6, knight e7 plan, and black's position just looks really bad to me. Alright, queen b7, so let's start with b5. I probably could have played knight a5 already there, but it's fine. So knight c8, and now let's go knight a5, and this is not going to end well for black. So knight a5, queen b8, knight c6 or something, or even b7. Let's go knight c6. Hang on, knight c6. Seems, I mean, everything looks like it should win. Let's go this knight to c6 just to be sadistic. There's even going to be knight d8. Alright, so let's go knight d8, I guess, and then Take that rook. Yeah, so this was a bit of a sadistic game. But yeah, black just completely didn't get the kind of King's Indian counterplay that he needs. Alright, Udem representiva ajedrez. It's been a while since I've played with you. Let's have a good game. Do I let black play the Nimzo in my repertoire? No, I play knight f3 on move 3, so he can play into either which somewhat restricts white's options, and the queen's gambit declined, but I still think I would fight for an advantage. But it allows the queen's Indian, but I like that move order. Alright, Udem representivo 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, aborto. I'm sure that's the wrong word, but okay. Let's play with Dr. Bokey. I remember he always gave me some good games. Alright, Dr. Bokey, show me what you got. Alright, so here we're getting a Slav, which is a pretty far cry from the kind of King's Indians we were looking at before. And keeping in line with my repertoire. Do I play the Trompowsky? No, I played it once as a surprise weapon against Jeffrey Zhang back when he was so young that he had basically no games in database and I didn't know what to prepare for, but Trompowsky is really not the most brilliant opening you'll ever see. So yeah, I'm still keeping in line with the way I'm playing the repertoire. There's one nice thing about the Banter Blitz sessions is that you remember the analysis very easily. Alright, so here he's playing this f5 plan, which makes some sense, but I'm not sure I totally believe. So I'm going to go bishop d3, and my plan now is to play knight e2 and reorganize my pieces this way. I don't know. This is actually a pretty reasonable version of the line I was giving for white with colors reversed, but maybe he's getting some kind of attacking chances here, but he has to, it's not that easy. I mean, it's, yeah, so g4, it's very direct. I guess I have to go like knight d2. And he can consider like bishop h2, queen h4, rook f6, but I think the knight on e2 is a very good defensive piece, because I'll be able to go g3, and the queen will not be able to hide on either h5 or h3. So it's hard for black to just, this knight on e2 is a very good defensive piece. It's hard for him to just crash straight through with a direct attack. And if I'm allowed to play bishop takes e4 and then bishop a3 to get rid of the dark squared bishops, then I will definitely survive. And if white survives here, white's obviously much better. And Batman says, why bishop e2 and not bishop d3? Because in this move order, I think it's very important that I want to meet d takes c4 with a4. I don't want to be forced to capture back on c4 directly. So if you play bishop d3 on move 6, following dc4, you must take back on c4 right away, while you have the additional option of a4 if you start with bishop e2. Also, there's a line later on where, like, if you're bishop e2, you can run into e5. So funnily enough, in my main line with bishop e2, I end up playing bishop e2 and then later on playing bishop d3, losing a tempo, but there's concrete reasons that you can't get the bishop to d3 in one move. But yeah, so Dr. Bokey here is thinking, which he probably should be doing, because this is a pretty critical position. It feels like he has reasonable attacking chances here, but those will evaporate in just a couple moves if I can consolidate, and so he has to be careful to not let that happen so easily, or else he's just going to be much worse. I think he should play queen h6 here, but we'll see. If he's thinking about bishop h2, I don't think it ever works with the knight there. All right, so that has to be a big mistake. Wait, can I not take on d5, take on e4, and then stick the queen on c6? I guess you can take back with the e-pawn, and then I won't be able to stick the queen on c6. That's probably his point. But still, I'm very happy to see this. So take, and now I think he has to take with the e-pawn. This way, if he takes with cd5, I can go like bishop e4, queen c6, and I'm taking his stuff. So this way, yeah, I cannot take on c6, but after knight f4, I think the position's quite difficult for black. Now queen c6 is an honest-to-goodness threat. So sure, he plays bishop b7, but it feels like this position should be quite good for me. So I'm going to start with g3 and bolster this knight, which I think is a good place to start. Do I use chess-based novelty mining function? I have no idea what that is, so the answer is no. All right, so now let's take this knight, and if fe4, bishop e2, I mean, it's very clear my king is now totally safe, and at some point, he's going to have trouble defending this g4 pawn. And I kind of want to play bishop a3 to challenge the dark squared bishop. Okay, so that blunders knight e6. I don't know if that was a blunder or a sacrifice. I mean, my knight on f4 is a very good piece, so I'm not totally sure I just want to do that. So I'm actually not going to take this exchange. I don't know if it was a blunder or a sacrifice. So I just want to go bishop a3 and challenge this bishop. If he plays c5, I go queen d1. Threatening g4, threatening dc5 and stuff, and he's completely tied down. And yeah, I think my knight on f4 may just be better than his rook, so I'm not sure if I really need to take it yet. So again here, like I can just go knight e6 and take that rook, but I don't even think I want to. I just want to keep building up the pressure. Alright, so he takes the knight. I guess he understood that this was a good knight, but the problem is now, like, black's position's really coming under pressure. So, let's see, I see some interesting options. If I go dc5, bc5, bishop b5, bishop c6, bishop c5, bishop d5, bishop f8, this is getting very messy, but I have a feeling it's good for white, so I'm going to give this a try. This is very complicated and this might backfire, but I think it's working. So, and I trust myself. Alright, so he takes with the knight on c5, which I guess makes some sense, but well, I don't really want to let him play d4 though, which is kind of annoying. Let's start with b4 to kick this knight away, and then I'll be able to play queen b3, which discourages d4, and then my bishop will come back to b2. Well, but he has knight d4 though. Gotta be careful. Okay. Yeah, this was now really dumb. I'm regretting how I've played this. Let's start with queen d2. But I've played this very badly. If he plays d4 here, he has very real counterplay. Queen d4 I don't like as much. Here if I go rook fd1, I mean, I think these endgames are just going to be really bad for black because of all of his weaknesses, and he should be trying to play a middle game and get attacking chances instead, because here I just sort of have everything under control. He can no longer play d4 because of f5, and I think this is quite a difficult position for black. I can consider any number of moves, but my first thought is let's get this bishop to b3. Which does a couple things. It obviously pressures the position, it overprotects c2 in case that ever becomes an issue, it clears a route for my king to get to like e2 later. So he plays d4, but I think I can take it. Or I can even start with actually, what if I start with bishop b3? You're not going to play d3, f5 will come. So I like starting with bishop b3. So he goes king f6, but bishop d4, and it's not made on the back rank. I have rook d1, so I don't know what black's playing yet. So here now I'm just good to go. So I have to be a little bit careful, but it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Let's start with this one, and now check. King f5, my thought was bishop c2. Check, and then I have rook d5 check and rook e5, and that's good. So, good game, Dr. Bokey. This one was interesting. I think it was a bit of a back and forth encounter, but I managed to do it all right. All right, let's play with Samuel Fincansala. How is this? Fincasolana. Well, you have a very lovely first name, Samuel Fincasolana, so good luck to you. All right, is this my first game playing black today? I don't know why I'm getting white every game. But yeah, so I'm going to keep on playing the repertoire. Bishop c4 is not wildly challenging, but I'm going to just spam the repertoire back into the chat. Yeah, so here the plan I came up with was just e6 and knight bd7 and b6, which is fine. There's other ways you can play this kind of position, but it just feels to me that when white plays something non-challenging like this, you definitely want to tax your memory as little as possible. And here, just having an easy setup that works against everything and equalizes comfortably is quite attractive. So take, and then... Okay, do I care about bishop b7, knight f7? Probably not, but I'm not even going to give him the option. Yeah, so here it's probably already very slow. Well, now it's definitely better for black. Prior to this, prior to him giving me the bishop pair like this, black was probably already a little bit better, but it's really not much. It's very solid. But yeah, here, now that I have the unopposed dark squared bishop, I'm good, especially once he gives me this pawn. So let's go bishop d4. And now, I mean, he's clearly trying to attack me in some capacity. I just don't think it's going to work. So let's go king h8 and get out of the way just in case. I really don't believe in this attack. All right, so c3. Let's attack this rook. Rook h3. All right, I'm going to be boring and just force an endgame. I think that's easy enough. Take the queen and then go rook d8, and he will struggle because the d file is coming. Although he has rook hd3 here. Yeah, I just blundered this completely. Oops. Now it's actually really going to be a tough conversion because of the opposite bishops. Let's try takes, and I'm going to start with rook b8 and try to get some pawns moving. But he goes like, yeah, so there. And now my thought is I can go rook b7, and he cannot go rook d7 because I think if he loses c3, that's too many lost pawns. So let's start with rook c4. I picked a non-premium guy, sorry. He had a nice first name. What do you want me to do? Yeah, now I should be good because I anchored the bishop on d4, and his bishop's really bad. So let's go f5 and start gaining space. F3, sure, but my king is coming, and his bishop is just so bad on b5. Alright, so let's go, just take this and go king e5. Seems easy enough. Chooky, take on e4, and yeah, so despite my hiccups here, I think I managed to play a reasonable game. Alright, so now he's almost checkmated, actually. But how greedy do I don't know how aggressive I really want to be. Let's just get this pawn moving. That seems easy enough. I was thinking about some kind of bishop e3 and play for mate, but there's no point. Just get this king in and the pawn's coming, and I'm in good shape. Alright, so rook f5, and now he has to be careful. Like, he can get mated in a couple moves if he's a little bit careless. I mean, I'm threatening to play h5 and then e4, but... Alright, so hang on. h5, king, and then e4, and bishop f6 is mate. So let's just give this a try and see what happens. Bishop f5, bishop f6 mate. Nice. Okay, so good game, Samuel Finca-Solana. Let's play someone else who is premium. All right. Oh, there's a Borat? Okay, I gotta play with Borat. All right, Borat Sagdiyev. Here we go. Who's Borat's nemesis? Boltov? Azamat? I don't know. All right. Borat in the house. Okay, so this guy is playing into the Tarrasch as well. I don't know why so many people are liking the Tarrasch these days. It always struck me as a second-rate opening, and it felt like white just gets easy play. I mean, whenever you see these isolated... I don't really believe in isolated queen pawns against fianchettos. You have to play them against, like... If I have to play e3 to develop this bishop, then at least the other bishop will be bad, and additionally, like, a bishop on d6 can laser down on the king side, and there's actually some kind of pressure, but... Without that, it's not great. Anyhow, here, I think this line with c4 is really bad for black because of this move b3. If knight c3 had been included, then bishop b4 is pretty reasonable, but this move b3 just causes so much issues. I think black just has to take it, which he doesn't want to do, but... Alright, so that just should lose material somehow, and I'm trying to remember in the course exactly how I wanted to crash through, but... If I take this and then go queen a4, he has bishop e6. Wait, I want to say that it takes a knight a3. I think this is right. Take a knight a3. But I'm not totally sure. And here black's position is really bad. So bishop e6. Can I go knight g5? I think I can. If bishop d5, there's e4. So, and if queen d4, there's bishop c6, and if knight d4, just knight e6 and knight c4. I think this is just bad for black. Too many threats. Sorry if I'm a little lower energy today, guys. I was up till 1 a.m. last night. I didn't realize. I agreed to something not understanding how long it was going to be, which is, of course, 100% my fault and nobody else's, but I'm a bit tired today as a result. And I'm not the kind of guy who can just, like, play well when exhausted. I know some people can just play well under any circumstance they want, but that's not me. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure this is right. I'm pretty sure this is how the repertoire went. And now knight e6 comes and there's too much hanging stuff. So what do I start with? Bishop b7 seems like a good place to start. Yeah, I think this. I'm pretty sure this is right. And I should win at least a pawn. Borat looks very happy, though, I have to say, in that picture. Yeah, I really don't believe black can get away with playing c4 in this Tarrasch when white has delayed knight c3. It's too much. Yeah, so here bishop c6 check. If I recall, we have to be a little bit careful. If knight c4, queen c7 is a little bit annoying. So actually I think I'm supposed to take this one, if I'm not mistaken. And he can take with the knight on d8, but that's depressing. And if this knight takes c4, he can go knight d4 with bishop f3. And it's not the most glorious extra pawn in the world, but it's still a pretty healthy extra pawn. All right, so bishop c5. Let's get my bishop out of harm's way. And king e7, sure. Just start completing development. At some point, I'm just a pawn up. Alright, so that one, I guess let's give a check, which will be a little annoying to meet. The bishop doesn't really... I think black would much prefer the knight go to d4 than c5, so I thought provoking it to c5 made some sense. And here, white is just a very clean pawn up. So knight e4. Sure. Let's go rook c2, overprotect the d2 square, and look for like rook b1 next or something. Alright, so rook b1, rook d8, but now doesn't knight e5 take stuff? I guess he has rook d1, but that's also not going to hold. Yeah. Take and king g2, and yeah, it's a clean pawn up now. So let's start with knight d3, get the knight to a nice solid square, and now rook c7 is a threat, and actually a pretty hard one to meet. Alright, there, so let's continue gaining space. This is a very slow, methodical game, of course, but there's nothing wrong with that. Alright, so this rook is annoying me. Let's go knight b3 and kick it away. Sure, so knight b3. And then let's go e3. I don't know. These games are not flashy, but when you win like this, but winning is winning, and I think this is just been like very convincing every game in the Tarrasch. It's just like there's never been a moment where I thought black would hold it, and it feels very easy. That's not going to help black's cause, but at the same time, the position was just bad. All right, so good game, Oops Kitty. Let's see who else wants to play. I think no Banter Blitz session is complete without our pal Jup, but I don't see him here. So let's play with Mr. Bogues instead. I know he likes to play Banter with me as well. Man, I'm getting white like every single game, and I have absolutely no idea why. I don't think I've told people to just challenge me with black, but... Alright, so let's see if Bogues can cause any damage to my repertoire. He's a pretty well-prepared and pretty smart dude, if I recall, so... Let's see. Alright, so... Bishop e2... e5, Bishop e3 is, of course, what I've been playing. And a couple people have played knight c6 here, which I think is a bad move. And Bogues does it as well, so maybe he disagrees, but I think these positions are just terrific for black after Bishop e3 and knight d2. I got the coordination I wanted, and I'm not gonna castle into the attack, so I just don't get it. Yeah, so here, like, there's just... As long as I don't castle, like, this attack is never going to work, so... Yeah, let's just crush through over here. If he plays g5, I'll probably start with h3, just because when he plays h5 and then g4, I will have an open h-file for the rook, and the only possible drawback to white's position here is that my rook on h1 isn't great. I don't know that, hang on. So if I play h3, he goes knight g6, and then... Is he in time to play rook f7? I don't think he is. He still has to play knight e8. So I think h3 is fine. h5 would be the typical response, but it's not scary. I really don't want to let him set up rook f7, bishop f8 as his defensive setup, but I don't think he can, because rook f7, I can take this and go knight b5, and he's not fast enough to play bishop f8, so he's going to have to play knight e8, which is just a bad sign. I don't know if this is the exact position I got with Alexandra, but it looks very close. And here I just think white is taking the queen side, and like I have 4 pieces on the g4 square, so g4 is not coming, and even if it does, and I just go hg and leave my king where it is and don't castle into it, I'm good to go. Ernest Carlson says, I feel rouser with troll symptoms. Me too, man, me too. I was really happy with this classical Sicilian repertoire. I don't know why everybody hated it so much, but it was, it's been serving me well, and I like it. Yeah, so I think this is still following exactly my game with Alexandra. I just don't believe in black's play here. All right, queen b8, sure. So this sort of forces knight b5. Actually, knight b6 was legal there. Oh well, I missed it, but it's still like... This is also the kind of position where where if like I think I'll be able to castle now, and a big part of that is like black's best plan in this structure, once I've castled, is probably to sacrifice a bishop on h3, and that's not going to happen anymore. So let's see. Let's just go b6 first before anything else. I don't know where that knight thinks it's going, but I like controlling this square, and the black's queen is not the most inspiring piece either. But once I castle and like black doesn't have a white squared bishop to go try to like get g4 through, I don't think it's I really just don't think g4 is going to come without a white squared bishop from black, so I don't see why this is so here. But now, like, okay, queen a4, I'm going to get this a file, I'm going to get the a file, I'm going to break through so much faster, it's like, it's not even close. Yeah, so I'm ready with rook a1, and black's queen is a really miserable piece here, obviously. Wait, doesn't that hang the knight? Oh, I missed, but that's good enough. Yeah, so this, I mean, this bishop e3 line, I really don't think black can play it like a normal King's Indian. I really think his best move is e takes d4. which takes the game to a completely different kind of structure where white no longer has to worry about getting mated. Because, like, if you see here when black is trying to play sort of in the style of the King's Indian, there's just never no counterplay is ever happening. So let's see who else. There's someone with a picture of me. All right, let's play with myself. Unearthed Arsenal. It's a good picture of me. That picture was from right after I won the U.S. Championship, like from the interview downstairs, I think. All right, Unearthed Arsenal. What do we got? It'd be funny if you just played some horrible opening while sporting a picture of me, but I don't believe that's going to happen. Well, maybe I spoke too soon. This isn't that bad. Are we going to get another King's Indian? I'm going to get some silly opening. Yeah, so here white's obviously just better. I mean, probably black's best move, honestly, is d5 and just play some kind of Queen's Gambit declined with a tempo less, and that's what he does. But, I mean, that's obviously not really a serious attempt to equalize either. Jup says a rouser. Maybe we'll be able to pull that off. Let's see. But yeah, so here I just have a typical Queen's Gambit declined with an extra tempo that I can try to do something with. So let's start with Queen c2, which I think is a nice move because it avoids the Lasker variation with knight e4, which is pretty annoying, and the reason that I chose to put the bishop on f4 in these structures instead of g5. All right, so h6, bishop h4. a6. Okay, so that's not a subtle move. He probably wants b5, so I'm going to play rook d1. It's a move I like to play in these structures. And if he plays dc, bishop c4, and b5, I don't have bishop a2 yet, which is where the bishop usually wants to go, but here I think once he's played b5, bishop d3, bishop b7, he's either completely fine or basically lost, and it depends on whether he can fight for the c5 break or if I can clamp the c file, and I think unfortunately for black, I'm going to clamp the c file. I don't believe he's going to stop that from happening. So I'm just wondering how. If I start with bishop f6, knight f6, knight e4, looks really bad for black. I do think the Lasker defense equalizes for black, yes. All right, let's just take this and go knight e4. I think this is a pretty typical plan in this structure, to just try to clamp down on the c5 square as hard as humanly possible, but it's actually, I don't know if I love how I've played this, but I still think as long as he doesn't get c5, and I don't think he will, white should be clearly better. I don't know if I've played this particularly brilliantly. All right, so knight d7, he heard me about getting c5 through. Let's go knight e5 and fight for the c5 square. I don't know. I'm starting to think I've played this like an idiot. I mean, why is my f rook on d1 instead of the other one? But all right, so there, knight takes d7 does not work because of fe4, bishop e4, and I lose. So I've just got to move this knight and admit I've been outplayed, or no, I can go knight c5, and white should still probably be better, but no, knight c5, then c6 comes. Oh, let's just go knight c5. I don't think there's much else to it. Yeah, so the point is if knight c5 and queen d5, I have c6, but I have a feeling I haven't played this particularly well. So he takes on e5, but now my queen will get to c6 where she's really good. And he can go like rook b8 and take my b pawn, but this is just so slow, and I'm gonna play like my bishop to b3 in the meantime, which I think is taking more important stuff. But I guess he gets the rook to b6. I don't know. I've played this game really badly, of course, but that's nothing new today. Yeah, the rook gets to b6, and what do you know? I'm just a pawn down. Like, this is not brilliant on my part. King f7, wow. It's clever. Now rook d8's a threat. Okay, so rook c1 and go after this pawn. Man, this guy's actually playing really well. Hang on, that move I don't get though. Why can't I take it? Let's find out. Maybe he mass slipped c5. Yeah, c5 would have been really good. This guy's playing like really, really well. I mean, I should have just been better, and I think he's just played all the best moves over and over again. So, but I suspect this last one was a mass slip, and then because if he had played c5, I mean, I can't stop c4. Once he relieves the pressure on the e6 pawn, he should be in good shape. So here, now there's, I think he's basically fine, but maybe still a couple problems to solve. All right, so let's start with queen back to f3 and threaten queen f5. Yeah, so that's not going to help his cause. Neither is that. All right, so I managed to get out of this one in one piece. Just some nonsense, but yeah. Okay, so good game. Unearthed Arsenal. All right, so Jupp wants to play white with me, and he wants a rouser. So let's do this. All right, Jupp. Let's see if you can challenge the rouser. Or challenge the classical Sicilian, yeah. So I've played a couple of rousers with Jupp. He's a principled dude, and after I continuously beat down his anti-Sicilians, I'm very happy to say that he has started to play quite a bit more aggressively, which I really approve of. And now this line is interesting. But yeah, so I think g4 is actually not great. And the reason is that when you play g4 with black's pawn with the bishop on g5, black has this move h5 available. And the real question is what happens in this pawn structure. And I think white is better if you can play h4 and anchor the bishop on g5 with rook g1, but here he's too slow to do that. So I'm actually just going to lose this d6 pawn. I think he doesn't even want it. But he could have taken d6 there, but I think the endgames tend to be very good for black despite losing that pawn. You can just go like g6 and then king e7 and knight f4 with good counterplay on the h-draw. So he doesn't even want the pawn, so I guess I should hold on to it. But now I just think like black's position looks really good. Like if I go king f8 and rook h6, like I have everything really solid and under control. All right, so he plays this. I guess he wants bishop a6. So I'm gonna go rook c8 to stop it. But yeah, I'm no longer okay. So he plays queen back to d4. I'm gonna go rook h6. I don't want to make a draw just yet. He can take d6 if he wants it. I just don't think this tends to be very good for white. But yeah, by playing rook h6 now, I'm able to play g6 next. Yeah, these endgames where he takes d6, they just tend to have too many problems for white on the h file. There was a fantastic Christopher Yu game that I put in the Trustable course. Yeah, so he takes this, and then we go king e7, and after rook d2, I can go knight f4, and he cannot take on g7 because of knight g6, and his rook will get trapped. And otherwise, he's starting to face very annoying counterplay. Like once I go, yeah, so there, sure, but can I go e5? Maybe, probably I can't get away with e5. I think that's a bit too much because then rook g7, knight g6, and bishop c4. Let's just drop the knight back to g6. And I have a very solid position, and once I play rook h8, it's going to be a huge pain in the butt for white to defend the h2 pawn. Like, his knight on c3 can't move because a4 is hanging. There's weaknesses on the h-file, both in terms of the weak pawn and the weak squares. And so I just think these positions, despite the pawn less, are, like, totally playable for black. Like, it'd be a very different story if, like, white's rook were back on g1. If he could play h takes g3, then he'd be good to go, but that's not the case here. All right, so here if I go knight e5, and then he goes rook g7, knight back to g6, I think his rook is trapped. So that's fine. And after knight e5, am I sort of compelling him to play rook to g3? I mean, that'd be good news. So yeah, I think if rook g7, I just go knight back to g6. And if he has to play rook g3, then I can play like rook h4 or something and look for rook f4 next. And there's just too many kingside weaknesses. Yeah, so this, I think knight back g6 is good. This is the key trick that there always is. When's the next Banter Blitz for me? I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sure there is one. I just don't know if I'll have to check the calendar. But yeah, this will definitely be my last Banter Blitz from California for a while. I'm traveling to Glasgow soon, where I'll work with my coach. All right, so f4. He wants to pitch this pawn to save his rook, but I'm quite happy to just go take the rook. So let's go king f6 and take it. And now like white still has all of the same strategic problems, but with equal material, I think the game's approximately over. I mean, black's just gonna win. All right, so check and let him choose between getting the rooks off the board and losing the a4 pawn. Seems like good policy. To not Magnus's son, when can I play against you? Well, a good start would be getting a premium account, because I'm only supposed to play with people with premium accounts. All right, so Jep allows the rooks off, but then a4. Oh, obviously I was trying to play bishop takes a4, but I'm not the kind of guy to ask for takebacks or anything. So good game, Jep. Obviously I'm completely winning in that endgame, but you're only as good as your mouse, and yeah. Okay, so let's play with who else is here? Let's play with Irujin. I don't know. Let's see. Okay. So d4. No, don't worry, Jup. It's a good game. We're playing Banter Blitz. We're here for fun. It's totally fine. I don't care. So c4, e6, knight f3, and let's see. This guy does not want to play into the Tarrasch, like the other guys did, which makes some sense. But yeah, so bishop e7 is a very reasonable move. This is like the most solid option black has in the entire Queen's Gambit, but I think I was able to put it under a little bit of pressure in the course. Not a ton, but yeah. So here c5 comes, and we get to reach a very interesting structure. And I actually quite like this move order with b4, because after b6 I can play h4. And the whole point is that there's a line where this c6 pawn becomes weak, but we don't have time to discuss it here, I guess. And yeah, here I believe Hikaru played knight e4, but I also don't think it equalizes. That move I don't understand, like at all. So I'm going to just continue development. Okay, so normally here the idea is to take and go b5, and I guess just the question is there some reason that the rook on e8 is more useful? I don't really think so, but I'm just going to be calm and keep just developing normally. So he trades these, but these positions can get very uncomfortable for black if he's not careful. Alright, so knight f8 just seems like it's begging to get crushed. Both knight a4 and knight e5 look extremely tempting. Let's go knight e5. How the heck does he defend c6? Yeah, I think this is already basically lost. This lack of space is quite difficult for black in this line if he is not like really direct in here. I think things have gone badly wrong. So rook c8, but now queen a6 comes, and I think that he's getting killed on the queen side. Maybe he can play knight back to d7. So he does, but I still think this position should fall apart in short order. So let's start with knight a4. How are we going to take this one? I think probably with the pawn. I think grabbing b6 is worth it. So let's say we go d5, knight d7, knight b6, knight b6. Take with the pawn. There's going to be some annoyance actually. Hang on. So d5, knight d7, knight b6, knight b6, cb6, rook a8, queen b7. Seems totally winning. But my bishop is out of play. I'm going to take with the bishop just to keep it safe. I think taking with the pawn was probably fine, but let's just keep it like this. And I think if he takes, yeah, so that I think I can just take b6, and now I should be winning. When I have the bishop controlling the b8 square, it's gone. He could have tried bc5, but then my thought was knight c5, and it still looks very bad. Yeah, so here I think I'm just going to go make a queen. Or this b pawn should just go through. The bishop on e5 is so much better than playing d5 if we get to a structure like this one. So Bogdan says, what was the point of h4 quite early? There's a line where you need to play bishop h2. That's very sharp that I'm not remembering off the top of my head. But there's also, I mean, the real question is why is h4 better than h3? There's also knight g5 at some point where you need to remove knight e4. It's very complicated stuff. I can't really explain it quickly. You just have to look at the course, I think. But yeah, so now how do I want to finish this off? Let's just take this bishop and put my queen on c5. Seems like a pretty convincing way to end the game. Get the queen out of harm's way, put her on c5, 2 pawns up. I mean, he might be able to get one back, but I don't think so. Yeah, okay, queen c5, and now a4, a5 is coming. Yeah. So I think this is a pretty convincing pawn mass on the queen side. So a5. C1. Yeah, so this is why my banter blitzes are somewhat boring sometimes. It's like this position's obviously totally over, but it will take, like, you know, I'm pretty slow about finishing the game off sometimes. I just want to slowly but surely bring the pieces. If I'm 100% convinced I'm going to win with a move, I'm just going to play it. But it looks like he will have hastened the task with this move, rook a6, as now this pawn mass is coming. All right, so we might have time for 1 or 2 more games. Let's see who wants to play. Let's play with Gaston Martin. I don't know if I've played with him before, but he's clearly an FM, so he's pretty good. All right, Gaston Martin. Oh, no, I have played with him. Let's see what you got for me. He's beaten me once, too. All right, so this is my first time playing black against d4 today. Let's see what this fellow has in store. Continuing to play my semi-Slav repertoire. Yeah, so e6 is the repertoire. Yeah, fine, let's just play it. I was sort of considering bishop f5 because I like that move too, but that's okay. But yeah, so b3 knight e4 is my main point here, and I'm gonna get the same kind of stonewall position that we saw from the previous guy, or earlier on, but with reversed colors. And here, this is it's a little bit of a tricky move order. The big point is we can't let white play knight e5, and there was some tricky move order where I think we can avoid letting that happen. So I believe the best move here is bishop e2. But I'm not sure. Bishop e2 is bishop b4 check. Might be knight bd2. Yeah, so he goes for knight bd2. So here I think we have to go bishop b4. And then there is bishop b3, knight d7, so he goes a3. And I think the general point is you want to play bishop c3 because at some point I'm clearly going to have to play bishop a5. I think that's very obvious. But when I do, I'm like that it will come with tempo. Yeah, so here let's start with f5, and then if he castles, I will play bishop a5, and he's too slow to get his knight to e5 because knight c3 is a threat, and I'll be in time to play my bishop back to c7. Yeah, so here, once my bishop comes back to c7 and I go queen f6, I think if white is allowed to play knight e5, he completely stops my attack before it even starts, and I don't think he's going to pull this off. So here he should probably play something like rook c2, and I go bishop c7, bishop b2, and then queen f6, stopping white from playing knight e5, and then get ready to start throwing stuff. Okay, so here I'm going to start with bishop c7, because again, I don't want knight e5 to come. And I'm dead lost on the queen side, there's no doubt about it, but I'm hoping that I can make kingside trouble first, and g5 is going to come sooner rather than later. All right, so he does that one, which is very direct. Let's go queen f6, and if he takes on d5, I can take with the e-pawn, and it's not that easy for him to go after the c6 pawn. So we'll play it like this. And at some point, g5, g4 is going to come with hopefully a very powerful attack. And here, this is sort of what I'm talking about. In my game, I think the biggest reason I was able to win was that my knight was on c3 rather than d2, so the knight could come back to e2, where it became a very good defensive piece. Well, here, if I start going g5, g4, I'm very seriously considering just sacking on h2 and going queen h4, rook f6. So let's see if I can put this in motion. If I start with g5 here, rook c1, g4, queen c6, looks like a problem. I can start with rook b8, so I can go rook b6, makes some sense. Let's do that. I think I don't really want to lose the c6 pawn so easily. But soon enough, g5 is coming. Alright, so he goes a4, and now it's time. So g5. And I'm ready with g4 next, with a big attack, hopefully. So rook c1, and now can I get away with g4? Queen c6, gf3. I guess he has bishop e4 there. It's kind of annoying. Let's see, g4, queen c6, take, gf3, does bishop e4, fe4, rook c7. That looks actually kind of bad for white, despite his extra pawn. But maybe it's not. So I don't have that much of a choice. I mean, bishop b7 is such a sad move, but maybe I have to make it. Let's just be calm and patient. I think maybe I could have tried g4 there, but I don't think there's a huge need to rush. My bishop is bad on b7, but it's also clearly the least useful piece in my attack, which is coming. And here white has to be very careful. Like, if I go g4 next move, I'm just ready to, like, knight e1, bishop h2, queen h4, queen f2, rook f6, and he's just mated. So, like, again, I'm dead lost on the queen side. I mean, but I think I'm getting enough counterplay to keep this reasonable and playable. So he goes bishop a3, and I'm very tempted to just start sacrificing, so I think I'm just going to go g4 here. I don't... you cannot play... this line, like, you're just lost in the long run. You cannot play this line like a chicken. You just have to go for it. Alright, so this bishop h2 feels like it should be absolutely over. I don't see a defense, so let's go. This is exactly the kind of scenario where he really would have liked to have had the knight on e2 instead, the way I had in the game. I also didn't bring my rook to f1 so fast. Okay, so he just gives me the pawn, but that's not going to save him either. Let's go queen h4 and continue the attack this way, and if he takes with the bishop on e4, like, at some point bishop a6 is going to come. This just feels like it has to be gone. I mean, he can try g3, but yeah. So now bishop a6 is coming. So let's start with it, and that is the end. Yeah, so I was able to checkmate this guy without even that much effort, actually. Once g5, g4 came, it wasn't wildly hard. I think the knight on d2 is badly misplaced, and the reason that it wants to be on c3, and the reason that this whole line was playable for black, while the white side I thought was different, was in this line, I thought I could prevent white's knight from coming to c3. All right, so I have time for one more game. Let's see who's going to be our lucky guy. Let's play with Joy Shaw, because he gave me a hard game last time. So let's see if we played some Gligorich King's Indian, and I got a very good position, but then got totally outplayed. So let's see if he has found an improvement. And we will take a look at this game. Yeah, so last time he ended up playing with knight g4 here. So he does it again, and bishop back to c1, and here he went knight c6, and then he played this move knight h6, which was a bit weird. And here he can certainly play like ed4 when... Okay, so he goes knight h6 again. I'm going to just keep playing the same way we did that game, which I think is pretty reasonable for white. I got totally outplayed later, but I think I can play better this second time around. So let's take this. Bishop e3. So this is still literally just following the game we just played last time. And I think here... So, this is... So in the game I played, bishop d4, which I'm happy with. I'm still going to continue along, but when I was thinking later, I think my biggest issue is that I put the wrong rook on d1. Last time I played rook fd1, and here I think that like I had to play the other rook back just the next move anyway. And here I think it's much better to play with this rook instead. And now I'm just thinking how I want to handle this. So let's say I take this one and go knight d5, and then I think structurally white's better, and it's very nice that my rook on f1 is stopping any like trickery that he could try. So I don't know, maybe I could have played this better, but I think that this position, like, I really put the wrong rook on d1 last time, and now with the right rook I should be better. So he starts thinking, sure, so queen d7 makes sense. How do I want to proceed? Maybe I start with g3 to dominate that knight. Seems like a good place to start. And knight e3 does not work because after fe3 my rook on f1 will defend. So here that knight suddenly looks really, I mean it looks nice on f5, but in fact I actually think it's just a pretty bad piece. So now I'm going to tuck my bishop back on g2 to avoid any tactical tricks, and then play rook fe1 next, and I think black is just worse due to white's better structure. So he goes rook fe8. I'm going to start with queen d3. I don't really want to let him like sacrifice a pawn with d3 and open up his bishop. So yeah, guys, so I think this will probably be the last game of the banter session, but all right. So he's really playing in defensive mode and trying to swap off a bunch of pieces, which I think is pretty natural because I don't love his position, but I also think I still retain good winning chances. So I'm going to play this sort of fancy move, rook e4. And I might even play bishop h3 next. All right, so he does that. Let's bring the rook back to e2. I don't know. I've probably misplayed this again. He can take it and play d3, and then black will be okay. Oh well, but at least I'm not dead lost the way I was against him last time. I think this repertoire I did with the King's Indian is quite a bit better for classical than it is for Blitz. Like these strategic lines where you're trying to where you're like trying to like get good long-term pressure, they're just so much harder to play in Blitz. Alright, so let's take this and bring the knight to d3 to stop him from playing d3. If I had played bishop f1, he could have played d3 anyway. And I think even this, like, this looks very simplified and like he should be making an easy draw, but I actually think it's quite complicated. I mean, this pawn on d4 can become a very serious weakness. All right, so there already I'm looking at knight b4, and I'm threatening like knight c6, and I'm ready with king d3, and at some point this pawn could just drop. Like, in fact, now knight c2, how does he save the pawn? I think I'm just going to get it. So knight b7 hangs the knight, but the position was already bad. So yeah, now we're obviously down here. Yeah, so good game, Joshua. It was, I think that at some point I probably could have gotten more pressure, but it really says a lot that like even when black was able to just like trade all the pieces, that even still like this whole game, the bishop on g7 never got to play and the d4 pawn just remained a weakness. So anyhow, good games, guys. This was a fun session. I am exhausted just because of the late night last night. I'm looking forward to a well-deserved nap. Good job, everybody. We'll see you next time.